Guys, we're going to jump in, but Jacob, didn't you want to give us a little update on 1923? Is that correct?
Yeah, so me and a fellow other webinar seminar, you know him, you love him, Javi Jabba, the Italian guru.
Yeah.
We spent some time together over the past couple of years watching this show called 1923. So if you've never heard of it,
Hold
it's
on,
a
guys. Sorry.
prequel to the TV show Yellowstone. You've probably heard of that. It's an insanely popular show. If you haven't heard of it, it's about a family that fictional runs the largest ranch, the largest privately owned land in the country. Fictional, and they share a border with Yellowstone National Park, a a reservation, and a piece of land that has been bought by land developers. So it's kind of about four of these groups and how they interact with each other. You know, you got the national park. It's mainly about the ranchers, the family, um, and then of course, the tribe, the land developers. One of the show's pretty good. It's entertaining. It's TVMA. Not for the family, I don't think, but it's kind of like a soap opera. It's really melodramatic. There's a lot of stupid coincidences, but it's so entertaining. You kind of don't care. Anyways, this family, the Dutton family who own the ranch, are said in Yellowstone. Sorry, I had a. Could you guys not hear me a bit?
No, we could hear you. It was just
You're
kind of
back. You're
getting
good.
quiet and going back. Well, you're good. Keep
You're
going.
good. It fixed itself.
How about this?
Ooh.
So
Keep
this
going, bro.
family, they say in the show several times, you know, we're fifth, sixth, whatever generation ranchers. We've lived here for so long. We are, and they show in the show Yellowstone, they have a family cemetery that goes back to 1883. So they made a prequel about, wow, it was probably 4 years, maybe 5 years ago now, called 1883, about the Dutton family going west on the Oregon Trail. And it's a 10-episode miniseries, and it's pretty good. It's got like Tim McGraw, Sam Elliott. It was a pretty good cast, and the show was pretty well put together itself too. Um, just like Yellowstone, it had its melodramatic moments. It had its times. It had the Italian guru and I rolling our eyes because something was so cheesy. We were like, "What are we watching?" But when it wasn't like that, it was a pretty raw depiction of the American West and the Oregon Trail. A lot of authenticity in the set design and the costumes, and generally, 1883 is really was really well received, and it got great reviews, and people thought it's probably the best thing to come out of this series, this spin-off prequel. Well, they decided to follow 1883 with a show called 1923. And of course, it is about the Dutton family. And here you'll see the season 2 poster. And unlike 1883, they did 2 seasons. And so this show focuses on the family 40 years later. They're established ranchers, and it's about kind of changing times. The main threat of the show is one of the first land developer who we know are going to be the big bads way down in Yellowstone. He's come in and he's ignited a range war between the Irish and the Dutton family on their ranch. Excuse me.
Slurpee.
He hopes the range war everyone will kill each other, and something in my throat. Wow. Everyone will kill each other, and he can make the first resort. Obviously, we know this isn't going to happen, but it's the story of how it doesn't happen. What made the show different and made the first season really stand out was one of the main I'd say he's the main character of the show, besides Helen Mirren and Harrison Ford, who are the patriarchs of the family. Is a character named Spencer. He's the youngest son of the main characters from 1883, and who have now passed away. And Spencer, when the show starts, is in Africa, and they actually took the time to go to Africa and film all of his scenes. And it was really cool. So he fought in World War I and never came back, and he decided to stay in Africa and become a big game hunter. He was struggling with some form of PTSD, and he didn't want to go home. Anyways, this range war gets ignited by this land developer, and Spencer receives a letter from his aunt Helen Mirren's character that he has to come home. So what made this show stand out from the other shows was that its focus wasn't just in Montana. Half of the story was telling a 1920s travel through Africa and then through Europe and back to the United States. And over the course of the first season, he met a woman who was British royalty, fictionalized, of course. And she left her life to live with him, and they fell in love. So it's about their journey. Half the show is about their journey from Africa on the way to Montana. But then something odd happened. They announced this show was originally going to be one season, just like 1883. But then they announced that 1923 would be coming back for a season 2. It's kind of odd. It seemed like they were doing a mini series to explain the family's history. So what happens is at the end of the first season, these two characters, Spencer and Alex, they get separated at some point in Europe. And it seems like this was a decision that was made to extend the show, because the whole promise of the show was Spencer was going to return home and, as a war veteran, end the range war. He was going to take charge and defend the ranch. As you see, as they promised in this poster for season 2, defend or die. That's the character Spencer on the poster there. So it seemed like what was going to happen was he would come home, defend the ranch, and that'd be the story. But they ended the first season while him and his wife were still on their voyage. It's kind of weird. Anyways, they produced season 2. It's been 2 years since it came out, and John and I get together to watch it starting I think 2 months ago. And week after week after week, episode after episode after episode, he's not home. The whole premise of this season was supposed to be this range war that they've been talking about the entire show. Him and his wife are still not home. In fact, they're separated. So the best part of their story, which was their chemistry as they went through these adversities together, was just not there. He was just grunting his way through problems, and she was just crying her way through problems. And there was no banter or camaraderie that we kind of got from their journey in the first season. And it really just felt like they extended the story to get a second season out of the show, which was, I think, became immensely popular. It was on Paramount Plus. Week after week after week, nothing happened in season 2, to the point where John and I were just laughing at some of the insane plot developments, thinking this is ridiculous. What awful thing could happen next to keep him away from Montana, as promised would be the focus for this season. So it really does seem like they tried to add maybe 6 or 7 episodes. They're only 8-episode seasons. It seems like they tried to add 6 or 7 random episodes to extend it to a second season. The finale of the show came along, and it was fine. It was a good ending. He came home, stopped the range war, as we all knew it was going to happen. It just felt like we had to spin our gears for 6 weeks waiting for it. This season didn't do very well with fans. It ended up with a 50 or so % on Rotten Tomatoes, which is pretty unusual for these series, from what I understand. But yeah, we John and I loved the first season, or at least greatly enjoyed it. Just like Yellowstone, it was highly entertaining. But this second season really, really dropped the ball. It was an impressive downturn, and while the show had a good ending, it was not worth the whole journey on the second season to get there. Let me put it in comparison. In the first season, they would go from country to country to country every episode as they were following their journey. These people were stuck in train station to train station to train station this season. It was painfully slow.
Yeah.
And the story at home was put on pause because there was nothing to do. So they used winter as a plot point. Nothing was happening in winter, and nothing happened in the show. It was tough to watch sometimes. It was sad because it was a show that we both enjoyed pretty much. But
Yeah.
I'd recommend 1883 again. That's pretty. It's TVMA, but 1883 can be watched on its own if you're looking for a good Oregon Trail story. It really is just kind of like an Oregon Trail miniseries. But I'm not sure if you really have to continue that family story into the future if you don't want. But the story will be continuing at the end of the episode. The narration provided, which was another cheesy part that we always rolled our eyes at. The narration provided a couple new story beats, and then Paramount Plus announced that they were going to be making 1943. So there will be another chapter in this family's life, but I'm not sure if I'll be there after the disappointment of this second season in 1923.
Sounds like classic money grab.
It's exactly what it felt like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I watch another movie show podcast, and they said exactly what you said. They're just like so frustrated with the plot. They're just like, what is going on? Like, there's nothing happening.
There were painful story choices that just it was frustrating to see a good show go down. But we've seen it over the years, especially all of us in this pod.
Yes, for
Jacob,
sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, for those who have never watched any of it, what should be the order that you should go through? Should you watch it Yellowstone first and then go back, or should you start at 1883, 1923,
23.
Yellowstone? What would you say?
I would say they pulled some shenanigans that make the watching order kind of tough. You should watch Yellowstone first because there's a lot of prequel style stuff in 1883 and 1923, how the family acquire things that get passed down, whether it's clothing or guns or things like that are kind of like nods to the future. The first episode of season 4 of Yellowstone was intended to bridge 1883 and 1923 by showing the death of the main character from 1883. So you can probably watch, and this was how it was released, seasons 1 through 3 of Yellowstone, 1883, and then season 4 of Yellowstone, which shows, the ending of 1883 pretty much. It was just a ploy to get viewers. Finish Yellowstone, and then you can do 1923. Yellowstone did have a definitive ending, but just like 1923, it wasn't that satisfying. So, enjoy the ride, but don't expect too much at the end.
Okay.
Cool,
Nice.
dude. Yeah. I've never watched it.
Me
So,
neither.
but it seems
I don't
like
have
a cool
Paramount
show.
Plus.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it looks like it's good quality.
Yeah, well, I mean, the production's nice. The acting is solid across the board on all the shows. The writing can be pretty thin sometimes, but it's like a soap opera. You can't take your eyes off of some of the scenarios.
Sweet. Well, any final thoughts on 1923, guys?
I was just gonna say, Jacob, the way you were talking about it, like how much you liked season 1 and then disliked season 2, it kind of reminded me of the way I feel about What If, or how I felt about it, because you watch season 1 of What If, and I enjoyed every episode. I thought it was great, but then like after season 2, even most of the episodes in season 2, I was like, I don't really care. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I feel like there's no point to it really. I know it's two completely different shows, but that's kind of the same vibe I felt about it.
No, it can happen where they start out with one premise, but something becomes popular and they kind of shift gears a bit. In What If, they started shifting towards original stories instead of the actual premise of what ifs. And by the end of What If, I mean, it was a string of like 4 or 5 original stories instead of what ifs, and that was kind of frustrating. And I think they did that because people liked the way that season 1 came together in the end and told an original story out of the what ifs. But then they, so just like in 1923, people loved this story of the big game hunter and the British royalty princess who ran away together in Africa and began a journey across the world. People loved that so much that they tried to extend it, and it did not help.
Yeah.
Dang, you just bridged the 2 shows of their issues.